Hi gang, 4 segments on the Joy of Football podcast this week and a new sponsor.
We start with comparisons where we've got England players, past and present, and a whole host of football managers to compare with Thomas Frank.
Letter from the Gantry by Martin is from the weekend's experiences, and there are plenty of them because he's Martin Tyler. 3 of the best: young player, old player, players from Brighton, Bayern Munich, Newcastle, Arsenal, Burnley, but with shades of lots of other clubs in their history. Don't forget, you can subscribe on Substack, you can get closer to us on the Patreon, and you can read us under the Joy of Football handle on substack.com. Here we go.
The Joy of Football podcast. With me, Neil Barnett.
And with me, Martin Tyler.
Looks for a shot in! Rooney! Aguero!
The Joy of Football.
Hello, the Joy of Football podcast with Martin Tyler, the greatest commentator in the world, and me, Neil Barnett. And this week, financial advice from St James's Place sponsors the Joy of Football. More from them later. Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I've been up to Burnley and watched, I love Turf Moor. I love Turf Moor. And you've been to Bromley.
Yes, to do a bit of prep. I've got a FA Cup tie coming up involving Salford City. And they were playing at Bromley, which is a bit nearer for where I live, to go to watch them and have a look at them. I was very well looked after by Bromley Football Club. Andy Woodman's an old mate. In fact, we've sort of managed against each other a few times before Bromley got in the league. Great character, great fun. And of course, his son is now one of the Liverpool goalkeepers, Freddie Woodman. Carl Robinson, the manager of Salford, who helped us a lot when I was more involved with first team non-league coaching, getting players on loan. He was very sympathetic to what we needed, so it was nice to catch up with him. And one of our star players at Hampton Richmond, where we had a really good side, Nicky Kabamba's playing for Bromley now, so I managed to have a quick word with him as well. So it was lovely, but it did mean, and this is professional over personal, and although there was a lot of personal involved in going to Bromley, that I missed live coverage of Wokings win at Aldershot in the big rivalry in the National League. Although I have watched it all since, and it was very enjoyable.
Right, well, I'll come on to a bit of Burnley later as well. Right, let's get on with the show. And we start with comparisons. We haven't had this for a while. I'm looking forward to this.
Okay.
Harvey Barnes. Harvey Barnes, left winger, Newcastle, 2 goals against Manchester City. David Ginola and Chris Waddle.
Of Newcastle fame as well. I would say that Harvey Barnes is less of a winger. He's certainly a player who gets his goals coming in field, and obviously the goals that he poached to beat Manchester City are very relevant, and that's why his name is on this list you provided for me, I'm sure. What I like about Harvey Barnes is that he's a son of, and not everybody will remember Paul Barnes, who scored a lot of goals in non-league football. York City was one of his clubs, had a few clubs. And I would imagine, and I don't remember seeing Paul play actually, although I think he scored a couple of goals in a big York win at Old Trafford, maybe in the League Cup. Maybe, if this is wrong.
Was that the 7-0?
No, York didn't win 7-0.
3-0, 3-0.
It was
3-0.
It was
3-0.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why I thought 7-0.
It must have felt like 7-0 for the Manchester United.
Chelsea were away up north in the League Cup that night. Yeah. And I was driving a car full of people who wrote in the programme and the club newspaper, which I edited. And we had a round of guess the scores, 1 point for a correct result, 3 points for a correct scoreline. And I was 10 goals out because I went Manchester United 7, York 0. And on a famous night, as we have only one Manchester United supporting producer with us today, on a famous night, Billy, it was Manchester United 0, York City 3.
That's not helping him. He's giving up smoking, you know, and he's a bit tetchy already. So we'll have to see. But anyway, that's Harvey Barnes for me. He's sort of got a sort of bloodline, if you
Very
like.
two-footed.
Yeah, and he's not always been in the team. You know?
No, because it's been Anthony Gordon and Jacob Murphy.
Yeah. So you know, when you're in, you've got to try and stay in, and that's the best way to do it, of course. It was you know, just a terrific result for Newcastle United, who have been struggling away from home, but they needed to win their home games, whoever they were against. But the history against Manchester City was against them. But they turned that one down.
Just one thing before you leave him. There's talk of him, because he's got Scottish grandparents, changing his allegiance from England to Scotland because he's only played one friendly. And Steve Clarke apparently a few years ago said, I've approached him, I've talked to him, he doesn't want to do it now, so it's in his court. I won't be approaching him again.
Well,
so he could, if he wanted to, pick up a phone and call Steve Clarke and say...
And go to the World Cup, maybe. I mean, we should... we didn't... Last week, the Scotland game hadn't been played.
No, yeah.
So we shouldn't pass today without saying what a wonderful achievement it was. And Steve Clarke, who's you know very well, and I know pretty well.
Who smiles broader than he's ever smiled, not in his career, but in his life.
And why
when
not?
The final whistle went.
That was probably the best moment of his life, I would think. But, and really, you know, they've got some great people, Andy Robertson, John McGinn, and lots of them. And I've spoken that before, that I find that the footballers from Scotland very good to talk to. They're manly, if I can say that. That's the men's team, of course. I'm talking about the men's team. And they look you in the eye and they talk to you and whatever subject you raised, you know. So I'm really pleased for them. It's not a typically English view, but I am very pleased.
But they're not blessed going forward, and Harvey Barnes
he would be. Yeah, but when you've been in that squad, well, it's going to be probably a bigger squad than they've had maybe for the internationals, and maybe one or two opportunities will open up. But I think he's got to do it soon. Obviously, the next internationals are in March, so he'd have to be available for that, I think, to have any chance. But yes, watch this space.
Compare him with Ginola and Waddle.
It was lovely to see Chris Waddle. I watched the Sheffield derby, and there he was on the touchline, but obviously the result didn't go his way. Chris Waddle is Chris Waddle, a footballer, is a joy to behold, really. Dribbling skills, great football brain, great football knowledge. Some people who just can beat people and don't think about it, really. We used to shout in my day, open the gates. They don't know when to stop their runs. They go into the crowd. Chris was never like that, and nor was David Ginola. Chris a little bit more elastic in his movement. David Ginola had a lot of power to go with his skillful dribbling as well. I would say
both were tall.
Yeah, I would say that probably David Ginola looked in the mirror more than the other two.
Well, Chris Waddle was the original football. I mean, I say this as a positive, and he looked a tramp. But that was his style.
He was a round-shouldered, hunched over. They gave him a sort of lower centre of gravity, really, because he was in.
He looked fantastic. He looked like everybody wanted to look playing football. He wasn't good enough.
I'm not sure whether he was the stronger voice in Hoddle and Waddle, but they had their hits, didn't they, as well? So and Chris is always he'll talk to you about any level of football. He's just. We talk about our addictions to it and our obsessions. He's got all those and more, really, and it's
worth remembering after his terrific time at Newcastle and at Tottenham, like Ginola went to Tottenham afterwards. Waddle went to Marseille and got to the semi-finals of would have been European Cup, I think then.
He was a big hit in France, and he's remembered there still. And he's certainly, and then the Sheffield Wednesday, where they had that season where they got to 2 cup finals. He played a big part in that under Trevor Francis, his manager. And it's still, and then he played at Bradford, didn't he, after that? So he played, I mean, he's been playing Sunday. I don't know whether he's actually stopped playing Sunday morning football. He was certainly playing it a couple of years ago. and you can just imagine he'd be first there. So but they've all, the Ginola and Waddle have certainly left their mark. Harvey Barnes has still got the chance. I mean, that was a big mark he made in the win over Manchester City. He's got a fight to get in that team, stay in the team, and if international ambitions do tickle him now with a World Cup qualification for Scotland, I wouldn't blame him if he did it. It's a lot of competition to get into the England team as an attacking player, really, unless you're an out-and-out centre forward, which his dad was, but he's not. So.
Yeah, I mean, Waddle obviously played in World Cup. Ginola famously missed out on.
Yeah, he was the scapegoat, wasn't he?
Yeah, when they failed to qualify for the World Cup in '94. But at the moment, you put both, I think, Waddle and Ginola ahead of Barnes at the moment, but he's building Barnes. Is that fair?
I mean, of course you would, because their careers are completed and the stats are in the history books. But Harvey Barnes is making news as he goes along, and
his first job is to become a regular in Newcastle.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly it, or to go and get Scotland out of the group stage in the World Cup, which would be a great achievement for Steve Clarke and whoever does play. So it's exciting. It's sort of come out of an opportunity that he's taken with both hands and both goals,
both feet.
Yeah, he is that. He is for sure. So he's got. I would hope that even better times are ahead for Harvey Barnes.
Comparisons number 2: Harry Kane, Jude Bellingham, and Phil Foden, with Thomas Tuchel saying all three can't play in the same team.
And then he played them. They played the last 15 or 20 minutes, didn't they? So, listen, he's got to juggle this with football skills, mostly football. Obviously, there've been a bit of issues around Jude and Phil in a way that's probably just taken a bit of the edge off what they contribute as footballers. They're brilliant footballers. And if I was Harry Kane, I'd be very happy to have them alongside me, trying to nudge up chances, in Phil's case, take free kicks and corners that might lead to Harry pouncing as he does. I think it's going to be one of the talking points, isn't it? Until the first team, first of all, when the squad is announced, and then when the first lineup is announced, this will be on everybody's lips, and we're not just talking about these three. Because
I want to add three now.
You're going to bring in that three more.
I'll add them straight away.
Yeah.
Morgan Rogers, Eberechi Eze, and Cole Palmer. Because if you can't play the three, Kane, Bellingham, and Foden together, how on earth are you going to fit these three in anywhere to the squad?
Well, I think Thomas Tuchel has shown he's a big fan of Morgan Rogers, and Rogers is also, as we're talking, on the back of a very, very big contribution to a win for Aston Villa at Leeds. And of course, Eze's hat-trick, North London Derby hat-trick's very, very rare, and he's now on the list. And Cole Palmer's not playing, so...
which might leave him fresher for the end of the season, but also might leave him out of the picture altogether.
Yeah, as we've all stubbed our toes, haven't we? I'm not blaming him for that. It's the groin injury's been the problem, but to stub a toe and actually have a fracture in it is a bit unlucky. It's probably only set him back a couple of weeks.
Well, interestingly, when Enzo Maresca was asked about it and asked whether or not his groin injury had healed, he said it was coming to an end. He didn't say it was ending. So I'm not convinced he was groin
You've
fit.
got a vested interest in this, Neil. You want him back in your team as soon as possible. The rest of us want him back playing as soon as possible, and when he's in full working order to do so, because he's special.
But they all are.
Special.
They all are.
Yeah.
I mean, it's extraordinary that England have suddenly got to this point with so many technically gifted attacking players.
Well, I don't think it is extraordinary, because the whole emphasis of academy football has been on beating men, passing the ball well, and obviously you get noticed most of all if you score goals. So it is a good consequence of what we don't like about perhaps the way the game's gone at the back, where the goalkeepers have to be as skillful on the ball as Phil Foden and pass the ball like Cole Palmer, and the centre backs don't like the long throws coming in because they're not used to heading it and kicking it, which is what their job should be.
You would say, wouldn't you, that Bellingham can play in deeper in midfield if asked to incredibly brilliantly. That Foden has struggled wide for England, but he hasn't for Manchester City.
Phil wants to play. I think he's made it absolutely clear to everybody. And if I'm misreading this, I apologise. But that he wants to be in the action. He wants to be in the middle.
That Palmer can play on the right wing. That Eze can play on the left wing, which is where he's played mostly for England. It's not like they're fighting over one position.
Would be ironic, wouldn't it, if Cole Palmer replaced Phil Foden, given that Manchester City sold Cole Palmer and kept Phil Foden.
He needs more goals in his. He had that one season of 20 goals.
Who are we talking about?
Phil Foden at City.
Phil Foden's got 100 goals for Manchester City. He's got 100 goals. He's a midfield player with an attacking pen. He scored 100 goals. I mean, that to me is an unbelievable talent. And many of them have been vital goals. Many of them have been artistic goals. And not many of them have been tap-ins. Not many of them have been headers. He's special.
So Harry Kane's a shoo-in.
Yes.
For you, not for Thomas Tuchel, but for you, is Jude Bellingham a shoo-in somewhere?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I mean, if we're talking about a slight seemingly altercation, which has probably been blown out of proportion, he's got a little bit of devil in him, and I've always thought, you need that. You look back at players like Alan Ball, who won the World Cup for England in midfield.
Nobby Stiles.
Yeah, well, that was a slightly different role, but yeah, Nobby Stiles always claimed that because he was short-sighted, he got the tackles wrong. I'm not sure that was true. He did have contact lenses.
But he for Manchester United was a central defender, but for England in the World Cup was a central midfielder who was kicking everyone. He was trying to kick Bobby Charlton.
He'd be a six. He'd be a six now, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
But no, I mean there's room in the squad for all of them.
Yeah, I think there's room in the team for quite a lot of them.
Depends who you play against.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
But Declan Rice seems quite rightly to be a shoo-in. But who plays next to him if you're playing 4-2-3-1, which is how Tuchel's played all the time? Bellingham could certainly do that, although Rice couldn't go forward as much then. He seems to like Elliot Anderson a lot, and understandably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear people on the on other members of our broadcasting fraternity saying, I've now seen a bit more of Elliot Anderson, and I realise just how good he is, because he didn't really feature very much in Newcastle, which is, although he would have done, I'm sure, if he'd stayed, and Forest haven't been where every number one writer of newspapers go to see. But when you see him, and his contributions actually at Anfield, he blocked a couple of shots that looked net bound, as well as showing his talent with the ball as well. So all round package. So, but his role, he's got competition. So the best thing ever in football is competition, because if you've got people playing for their places, and in club football playing, if you like, for their livelihoods, then you get that edge. You get that. People don't wander in. Complacency goes out the window. So the sides that perhaps where players are guaranteed, but I'm not saying it's deliberate, that they get deliberately complacent, but it's just a natural way of things. And something I've learned, every commentary I've ever done, I've wanted it to be the best I've ever done. I've never been, although I've had at times longer contracts than I had at the start, maybe a 3-year deal or something like that. I've never ever thought, oh well, that's okay. I've got another couple of years. I never ever thought that. And I look at players and think they've got to believe that, because you're only as good as your last game, and you can spend 50 years building a reputation and lose it in 50 seconds. You've got to be spot on it.
This next one was a bit
competition
of a
brings that as well. So
this next one is a bit of a self-indulgence for me. Enzo Fernandez, World Cup winner, but Chelsea midfielder, and Dennis Wise. It was pointed out to me by my son that how the similarities, and they're extraordinary. Basically, neither were blessed with great pace. Both are blessed with competitive physicality.
I just use the term devil in the soul, really, and that's what they both got.
And
no question about that.
Fernandez is extremely good at passing, but not great. He's not a Fabregas or any of those Bellinghams, Fodens, Palmers that we're talking about. But tactically, he's so aware. Tactically, he's unbelievable. And I can see why in a good World Cup team, he became a World Cup winner and why he was in it. Not because of his, simply because of his ability with the ball or even against the ball, but his ability over 90 minutes, understanding what's going on.
You used the expression just now, but I mean this as a compliment, and I mean this as a compliment for Enzo Fernandez. He plays like an old player.
Yeah. And he's coming into his game at last. But Dennis Wise took a long time to come into his game. He was a winger, of course, when he won the FA Cup at Wimbledon. And he was only moved into midfield midway through his Chelsea time, his 10 years at Chelsea. And I did once ask Harry Bassett, the Wimbledon manager, because he'd gone there as a youth player, as a central midfielder.
He was rejected by Southampton as a schoolboy, I think.
No, he wasn't. He walked out.
Oh, did he walk out?
Yeah, he didn't want it.
That explains, this is something I never, you've triggered something here, Neil. When he scored the winner for England, I think in Turkey, in a game in Turkey, and Laurie McMenemy was the assistant manager. I guess it must have been Graham Taylor, mustn't it? And I asked, could we interview Dennis? And Laurie said, as long as you don't mention what happened at Southampton. And I had no idea. I just thought because Southampton had released him and Laurie was very connected to Southampton, but he actually made a point of saying, don't ask about Southampton. So you've told me something that I should have known all those years ago.
Yeah, he walked out and he went to Queen's Park Rangers, actually. Yeah. And then on to Wimbledon. But Harry Bassett inherited him as a young player, as a midfielder. I moved him out to the wing and I asked him why. And being Harry Bassett, he replied, because I told him to off as far as he possibly could. And that was the furthest touchline. That was Harry's tactics.
Artful dodgers, both of them, Enzo and Dennis.
Right, the final comparison, if you were watching on television, as I was, Arsenal versus Tottenham, you'd have got that moment when, I think it was still 0-0, when Tottenham got a free kick and Vicario lined it up just short of the centre circle, and the centre-backs trotted upfield and the Tottenham supporters booed. They didn't want Route 1 football. So my comparisons are Bill Nicholson, manager in the 60s. When
double winning manager,
Keith Birkinshaw, manager in the 80s when they won 2 FA Cups and the UEFA Cup. Terry Venables, George Graham, who won the League Cup before moving after leaving Arsenal. Before moving to Leeds, did he go to after that? One Day Ramos, who won the League Cup in 2008. Maurizio Pochettino, who of course got them to the Champions League final in 2019. Ange Postecoglou, Thomas Frank. Is there a Tottenham way? Did they provide it?
I would say to the Tottenham fans, who's the leading scorer?
In your team?
No, who's the leading scorer for Tottenham?
Your centre-half.
Mickey van der Ven, I think.
Yep.
Richarlison, I think Mickey van der Ven got 6 as we speak. I'm not sure what Richarlison's goal, extraordinary goal as it was, took him to, but Mickey van der Ven is 6. If he's not the outright top scorer, he's right up there. There is a Tottenham way, I think. I think it's a way that over that period made them very successful cup teams, which means you can play with a bit of a swagger, but you might get beaten a bit more in league games where there's not that touch of romance about the result. The fact is that they've only won, we say this so often, been champions of England twice, 1951 and 1961. And of course, under Pochettino, they came close. And they played. It's always been a joy to watch Spurs play as a commentator because you expect that kind of football. But I found Brentford a joy to watch under Thomas Frank as well in a different way. And there are lots of ways to win football matches. I think their run of back end of last season under Postecoglou obviously was forgotten because they won the Europa League. So
it wasn't forgotten by the board.
No,
he sacked him.
No, and they've gone for a different kind of manager. That's what tends to happen.
Well, I mean, I haven't included in here Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte, who were clearly brought in order to win things and didn't. And the club has floundered, it seems to me, through poor recruitment and poor hierarchical.
They're still going okay in the league, despite the embarrassment at Arsenal. That's on the back of Woking winning Aldershot. I understand the two extremes of emotions, and the fact is that they've not done particularly well at home, which is also a bit of a worry. Which also applies to Woking, incidentally.
Well, they can't break teams. Well, they can't break teams down. That's the problem. Thus the Thomas Frank, let's go a bit more direct way.
Well, he started on the back foot, didn't he, with going to bring in a third centre back, and that obviously, if you're a fan, you go, well, maybe we're not going to be too adventurous today, and maybe the way to take on Arsenal would be to try and match them. But I don't think you beat Arsenal at their game. You have to come up with another plan. I think that way of, you mentioned Bromley Salford. Bromley have a very direct way of playing and very successful. And Salford didn't try and play them at their game. I know they lost the game, but they tried to beat them by their own methods. They didn't get drawn into a long ball confrontation. So he put a lot of thought in Thomas Frank. He was very honest. Frank was frank in the post-match analysis, wasn't he, about what he set out to do and what didn't happen. And I didn't envy him when he said, I've got to go home and watch it all again, which he hadn't got to, but he was choosing to do it. He best off doing it, that's for sure. So he's a day older and a lot wiser, I would imagine, having seen the game twice. So I think Thomas Frank's got a lot to offer. He's given a huge amount to English football with his time at Brentford. And yes, it's very, very short-term management. And yes, if we're talking about Arne Slot being under pressure and we've been champions, then which I don't subscribe to either. I do think those who make the decisions at big clubs have to show a bit of patience. And now we don't know quite what Tottenham are going to be like without Daniel Levy in terms of how they're going to handle this. But he's been there a blink of an eye. And give him a chance, he certainly deserves it.
Agreed. If you were choosing an all-time Tottenham 11 and you had to choose a manager, who would the manager be?
Well, you'd have to go for Bill Nicholson or maybe Arthur Rowe, who was the... See, you don't even remember him.
Arthur Rowe was the 1951.
Push and run football, yeah. Because of what they've done, but they're an illustrious bunch, and you can't fault Tottenham for not, when you throw in Mourinho and Conte in there as well, you can't fault Tottenham for not trying to get the right blend. There's just something, I don't know. History can be a very, very heavy burden on the shoulders. You think, oh, we don't do this, we don't do that. I'm going off after this podcast to do a commentary on Manchester United versus Everton. And Everton's record against Manchester United, both home and away, gives them absolutely no chance if you look at it like that. But of course they have a chance. And then David Moyes has never won as a visiting manager at Old Trafford, but they'll be sending out to do it, and these things do change. But that history can be, if you're 2-0 down after 25 minutes in your Everton, it's a bit more difficult than it would be if it was a ground where you've won last year. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Tottenham.
Listen, to all our viewers and listeners, you have to put an asterisk against Tottenham when Neil's talking about it.
No, I'm not anti-Tottenham. I keep saying this. I'm a child of the 60s, hippieism, peace and love, all that. I'm not anti-Tottenham.
In the 60s, they beat Chelsea in the cup final.
Yeah, but I'm still not anti-Tottenham. I'm a child of the 60s. I bloody hate Leeds.
We've got that
continue.
coming up. I've been blessed with an assignment that's coming up in December, isn't it? Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
8:15 kickoff. Honestly, away supporters not thought about. We move
away
on.
commentators.
We move on. We
very
got
happy
Voice
to
of
be
Passion.
there.
We got Three of the Best coming up. We want you to subscribe in order to get just more involved and to follow us on the Patreon and everything. And of course, you can read us on Substack.com, which brings us on to our next segment, because all letters from the Gantry are published on there. They're a long time after. I'm catching up. Ladies and gentlemen, Martin Tyler's letter from the Gantry.
Letter from the Gantry.
Thanks, Neil. Thank goodness for the return of the Premier League, more timely than ever, with the need to fill the sports pages about football and restrict the space for descriptions of England's shatteringly short defeat in the Test match at Perth. There was plenty of material from round 12 of the top flight fixtures, like the tale of a recent Everton manager masterminding a 3-0 win at Liverpool in his new guise in charge of Nottingham Forest. A 6th defeat in 7 Premier League games for the champions, and they have been behind at half-time in all of them. Sean Dyche even improving on Forest's 1-0 victory at Anfield a year earlier under Nuno Espirito Santo. That's the same Nuno who is putting some backbone back into West Ham. It could have been 3 wins in a row after Callum Wilson backed up his pre-match comments about believing he's still plenty to offer for England by scoring twice against one of his former clubs, Bournemouth. The second, a perfect example of his knack of knowing where the goal is, even when he has his back to it. The posts don't move is the mantra for instinctive strikers like Callum. He would also have been chuffed by Newcastle posting a very rare win against Manchester City, probably watching it on the Hammers coach back to London. Bournemouth's fight back for a 2-2 draw also carried a heartwarming strand. When West Ham previously visited the Vitality Stadium 11 months earlier, I covered the game, and Enis Unal curled in a brilliant free kick in the dying moments to give the Cherries a 1-1 draw. Back in January, he was seriously injured, the dreaded ACL. This was only his 2nd Premier League appearance since then. Even so, West Ham might have feared the worst when he came on, and another Unal equaliser duly arrived. And the Turkey international might have won it near the end, but even fairy tales have their limits. Bournemouth are one of 4 clubs beginning with the letter B in the Premier League, and in my time as a commentator, all have been in the 4th tier of English football, with their very status in the Football League in jeopardy. Brentford, Brighton and Burnley the other 3. I mentioned Brighton because I recently visited their stylish training centre at the coastal village of Lancing. I was invited onto a podcast with Seagulls legend Glenn Murray, expertly hosted by the eminent journalist Paul Hayward. So when you finish listening to us, please join them. The visit also allowed me to meet Fabian Hürzeler for the first time. As you might imagine, I was impressed, particularly in his philosophy of managing players as people first and foremost, recognising, for example, the importance of family time. That machine called James Milner popped in. We do have something in common, ageing in our respective jobs. Danny Welbeck was also around, ever smiling and with plenty of justification. This was on the eve of his 7th Premier League goal of the season in the 2-1 victory over Brentford. Both players older than their 32-year-old boss. When I first went to watch Brighton train, none of them were born. It was in Alan Mullery's first spell in charge. The pitch, such as it was, had a public right-of-way across it, and sessions were interrupted by dog walkers. And on the day I was there, ladies with full shopping bags on their way home. Mullers soldiered on regardless. That's how it was. The luxury of Lancing is how it is now. One final Brighton memory from an even earlier time than that. Almost 50 years ago, I was on the Gantry, a makeshift affair on the open bank at the old Goldstone ground for Brighton against Hereford United, very early in my career. It stands out for one extremely personal reason, which I haven't shared before. The game, which finished 4-2 to Albion, among the scorers was a Martin and a Tyler. Neil Martin, a former Scotland international who had the distinction of scoring the first Nottingham Forest goal under Brian Clough's management, struck twice. Dudley Tyler, in his 2nd spell at Hereford with a stint at West Ham in between, had been in their famous non-league team which knocked Newcastle out of the FA Cup and soon after earned a place in the Football League. The name check was pointed out on the day when, with all innocence, I promise you, all innocence, a passage of play saw me saying the names in tandem. Martin, Tyler, I only realised, honestly, when the production team, whose voices were in my ear from the outside broadcast truck, fell about laughing. You couldn't make it up, could you?
Oh, dear. I remember Neil Martin.
Yeah, he played 3 or 4 times for Scotland, I think. Yeah. I hope I'm right in this, but in doing my research for that game and reminding me of who played, both Neil, who's 85, and Dudley, who's a year older than me, 81, they're still with us, which is lovely. And so if any connections with anybody listening or watching, it would be nice if you could pass on that I've talked about.
It is extraordinary. Brighton, Burnley, Brentford, and who's the Bournemouth. Yeah. Just the rise that has happened, and that in the money massacred game that we have, they have broken the thread really of how it is.
No, it is. I mean, I think Burnley were really close going out last day, wasn't it? And
well, I'm going to talk about
Robbie Reynolds and Brighton. That was against Hereford as well. I sort of woven that in, really, shouldn't I? And yeah, you're 90 minutes away from going. Mind you, I speak up for the National League, but it wasn't quite as strong then. It wasn't such full-time football as it is now.
Well, I had a 12:30 kickoff at Burnley this last weekend, and I parked up quite early, very near the ground, and there's a cafe hole in the wall about 100 yards from the ground. So I went there and I got myself an egg and bacon sandwich and a cup of coffee for £5.20, took it back to the car and was very happy indeed. Very happy indeed.
Yes, and we should, one day we must do this as an item really, Neil's journey via the farm shops and the restaurants and the holes in the wall. We discussed this before the podcast, and there's no doubt I've tried to be athletic in my playing days and as a coach and whatever, and also to get up the Gantry steps and everything. But you eat so much better than me.
Well, I don't know. Driving back, it finished at 2:30. I hit the motorway about 3:20, the M65 out of Burnley, and I got down to the Birmingham area about 2 hours later, just under 2 hours later, and I pulled off Walsall, where I haven't been for about a decade, and I went to Mustafa's Fish and Chips and had takeaway fish and chips from Mustafa, and it was as good as it was a decade ago, so well done, Walsall.
Well, that could have been a sponsorship announcement, but Neil, you have got a sponsorship announcement for us.
Yes, a new partnership, lovely. This is the message. Now that the Chancellor's budget is done, you might be wondering what it means for you, your family, and your future. You won't be alone. There's lots to understand about how what she announced could impact your finances. If you're feeling like you need some help, know that St James's Place has a national community of advisors that offer one-to-one financial advice. The St James's Place financial advisor can help with your plan for the future, empowering you to make confident choices around your family finances. Visit sjp.co.uk to find your one-to-one financial advisor. St James's Place representatives represent only St James's Place Wealth Management PLC, which is authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. SJP approved 21st of October 2025. Right, we finish with 3 of the best.
And he makes them pay.
3 of the best. He's made them pay, and that completes a wonderful hat-trick.
Young player, old player, player. This is a unique week. We'll both have one of each. Young player.
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly, I suppose, tilted because I was down at Brighton leading up to their game. But Jack Hinshelwood, who's a young player who's I've mentioned before, and I'm not revealing any secrets here. He's a top player and a wonderfully versatile player as well. But he has this knack, and he also, unfortunately, suffered a bit from injuries. he has this knack of making a contribution when he comes into games, as he did against Brentford, where it was a strange sort of shot, but opportunist, a player who's prepared to take a punt on scoring a goal, you know. And in it went, and Brighton were 2-1 up. It was the winner. It perhaps shouldn't have been, because after that there was a second penalty given away, and Bart Verbruggen saved it, which was he was the hero really. He protected the win. But I always keep an eye on Jack Hinshelwood. He comes from a famous footballing family, going back to his great-grandfather, who played for Chelsea. We've been down this road before, in the 1950s, and all the subsequent generations have all been players. So he's got the bloodline for it, and he's doing very well. I think if he can stay fit, there'll always be a place for him in the team, because he's so versatile.
My young player's 23 years old, and he isn't talked about in the same way that Harry Kane is talked about. But Michael Olise left Crystal Palace to go to Bayern Munich for about, was it 65 million euros or something, or pounds. And he's not getting the goals, obviously, that Harry Kane's getting, but he is the third top scorer in the Bundesliga. And he is top of the assists by some way. And he is just playing electrifying football. And he really is of that generation that we were talking about earlier, of the Bellingham, Foden, Rodgers, Eze, Palmer. He's another one. It's just he's not English, but he came through in England. Another one that Chelsea let go.
Isn't it amazing, Neil, that Olise is doing well, Eze is doing well, and Crystal Palace are doing well?
I know.
So it's been a move to the benefit of everybody. Really.
It's extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. And but he's Michael Olise is becoming, I think, an absolutely world-class player. But will he play for France? Because if he's going to get into that front three, and they generally play 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, but if he's going to get into the three attacking or four attacking players, I mean, they've got Doué, they've got Dembele, they've got Mbappe, they've got Thuram, they've just got so many players, Barcola, to try and fit in, and it's going to be a battle for him to get in there.
Well, they're getting the squad again, won't he? So that's... and then you have to take your opportunity. What
a player. And you're right, Crystal Palace, they replaced Eze with a very good player, Yeremy Mina, Olise. I'm going to come on to another Palace exit in a moment, but your old player.
Yeah, I was so pleased for Eddie Howe that he managed Newcastle to a very important victory. Against the history of the fixture, against Manchester City. They've had a tough time, Newcastle, similar to what happened a couple of years ago when they were in the Champions League and their league form just waned a bit. And the same thing's happening, particularly away from home, where they've really not turned up often enough. And had that game gone the other way, I think he would have had a lot more awkward questions, although he doesn't deserve to be put into that. We mentioned earlier that is Arne Slot now going to be questioned after being champions? You know, things are very short term in our football. So Eddie works so hard. I think he's quite reluctant to be in the spotlight. You know, I don't think he's a natural extrovert.
I mean, he made a big call, didn't he, against Manchester City by bringing back Lewis Hall and putting Livramento at right back when he's been playing left back quite a lot. He played his wingers very narrow, almost like inside number 10s, inside forwards, and he just used the wide players for the whole length of the pitch, really wide.
Yeah, and what you're saying is he gave Pep Guardiola, the great Pep Guardiola, a real problem tactically. And the chances were taken. I mean, the offside call on Harvey Barnes' second goal, which wasn't on Harvey, Bruno Guimaraes, wasn't it? Those are the calls. That's so marginal that goes the other way, and maybe the result goes the other way as well. But it was Newcastle's day, and that meant it was Eddie's day. And for English coaches, we have to back them to the hilt, because they are at the moment.
They are not backed.
They are a declining breed, and we've got somebody there who I'm sure will be an England manager one day. But having broken that mould of Newcastle never winning anything last year, and they're still in, aren't they? Still in the Carabao Cup as we speak. And the Champions League is a strange setup where you can lose a game or two and still get through into the latter stages. So it's probably a slightly easier situation to manage in that front. But he needed that win, and I'm really pleased he got it.
My old player is a former Crystal Palace player. Again, Wilfried Zaha, now 33 years old. Left Palace, of course, as a youngster, went to Manchester United. It didn't work out. Went back to Palace. Led them from the left wing mainly through the 20 teenies.
Kept them in the Premier League, that's what you're saying.
And a couple of years ago, left at the end of contract, age 31, went to Galatasaray, didn't work out, went on loan somewhere, didn't really work out. He's just finished a season at Charlotte FC in the United States. They got into the playoffs because they don't have proper professional sport over there. They have playoffs, as if that is the same as the league. But they got into the playoffs and did not bad. And he did not bad.
That's for winning the top division. I mean, we love playoffs, but in a different context.
Yeah. And he got some goals, and he kind of got his mojo working again a bit. Olise's gone to Bayern Munich and being a star. Eze's gone to Arsenal and is being a star. Zaha went away and didn't become a star in the same way. If you were to ask me, and I go back to the 1970s, the team of the 70s at Palace with John Jackson in goal and Stevie Kemba in midfield and all that. If you ask me who is Palace's greatest ever player, I would not hesitate. It's Wilfried Zaha. He through those 20 teenies, if he didn't play, they lost. And if he did play, they survived somehow. He led them. He was a wonderful player for them. Was he a world-class player? I don't know if he's a world-class player or not, but he was Crystal Palace's greatest ever player. And even when they got Olise and they got Eze, he was Crystal Palace's greatest ever player. And I think he should be remembered with huge respect and with huge praise. Wilfried Zaha.
Yeah, I mean, he just about creeps into old player. I mean, he's not that old, is he?
No, he's not. He started young.
Yes. And that Manchester United just didn't work for him too soon. I think it would have worked for him 2 or 3 years later. And, he had a tilt with England, didn't he, as well, which didn't work out. So 13 years, I think, in a row, Crystal Palace have been in the Premier League. He was there for most of them, and he was responsible for the ones that came afterwards because he kept them afloat.
Your player?
Well, I can't ignore Eberechi Eze. It's amazing. I mean, we are very Palace orientated at the moment in this conversation, but what I like about him is the way, I mean, he scored some really vital goals for Palace in their winning of the FA Cup. But he wasn't always scoring, in a way, he was a bit like Zaha, because if he and Olise weren't playing, then Palace didn't win. And then Olise went, and if Eze wasn't playing, Palace didn't necessarily win. But coming on, he's got this ability to score from about 10 yards and to get a shot away. That doesn't have to be the most devilish shot, but it is the shot that usually finds the corner. And that's a kind of... it's a real bonus. And he's not really playing always as a 10. He's coming from a wider area. And that's the sort of thing that Brian Robson used to do for England and Manchester United, David Platt and people like that. And also Frank Lampard. And it is... I'd love to look at a montage of how... I can't remember. I'm sure he's got a couple of tap-ins, but it's a goal born out of arriving, quick mind, and the quick mind identifies the position, and it is a good one. The second balls do happen in the area, or you might get a tight pass in an area where you might not get a shot off, but he does. And so it was an exceptional hat-trick, and the first one in the North London derby since 1978 says it all, really, doesn't it? So yeah, there were many other candidates, including Jeremy Pino, who I thought long and hard, because he's the next one in, isn't he? When we're talking about, he's the one in possession now, but coming in a bit more mature as a Spain international. But he's really filled a gap. So it was him or
I saw
the
Jeremy
man
Pino come on for Villarreal in the UEFA Super Cup in 2021 in Belfast, and thought, blimey, he's good. Yeah. But here he is now doing it every week.
And he's just scored his first Premier League goal as well.
What a goal.
Yeah, what a goal. So there's a lot of good things happening around Selhurst
I mean,
Park.
Eze is just going through the roof in his I mean, if you look back to the cup final and his winning goal there, he's just going through the roof in his quality at the moment, game by game.
Well, goals emphasise the quality. He scored for England again, didn't he, as well? So, and I think that's what you'd pick him for now. I mean, people think about creative stuff, but virtually every game I've seen him play, he's scored or come very close to scoring. And they're special. And
can I just tell everyone about a conversation that Martin and I had before we started recording? Because, of course, Alan Sunderland got the last hat-trick in an Arsenal-Tottenham game for Arsenal. And I said, did you ever interview Alan Sunderland? And he did, because Alan Sunderland is from Yorkshire.
Well, I interviewed him actually after the FA Cup final when he scored the winner in 1979.
Yeah.
1979. But when I was working for Yorkshire Television at that time, but this was a working for ITV generally and working on the cup final. Yeah. When I worked for Yorkshire Television, anyone who was from Yorkshire and playing for the opposition got special mentions. And some of them, there was a guy, Peter Kitchen, his name is, older viewers, listeners will remember him, Late Norrian, but he was from South Yorkshire as well, like Alan Sunderland. And we get him, he was in a cup run with Leyton Orient that got to the semi-final, played at Chelsea against Arsenal, and he knocked Chelsea out.
He did. I haven't forgotten it. I'd resent him. No. I don't know why you brought it up.
Well, I'll tell you why, because when Peter retired, he joined the commentators team.
Oh, did
so he and I played up front together for 3 or 4 years. Oh,
brilliant.
Yeah, and I did all the running, he scored all the goals.
Well,
if you believe that, you believe everything.
I said to Martin, did you see the post-match interview with Eze, where he said that he prayed to God in the morning that he'd get a hat-trick, and God answered him and he got the hat-trick. Martin said to me, well, I guarantee Alan Sunderland didn't do that.
If he did, Alan, I apologise. And that's not
I don't think he'll be recorded.
That's not being disrespectful to Eberechi Eze, who's quite entitled to have his faith, you know.
Yeah. But there you go. My player is Jaidon Anthony.
You've been to Burnley.
Burnley left winger. Yeah. I don't know why Jaidon Anthony strikes a chord with me. He came through at Bournemouth. I think Bournemouth signed him when he was rejected by Arsenal Academy. He came through at Bournemouth. I think the first time I saw him, he probably came on at half-time in a game. And then the next time, and that was, I think, a 0-0 draw at Bournemouth. And then the next time, he just played a few minutes at Stamford Bridge. He got loaned out. That would have been under, I think he broke into the team under Scott Parker, but then played in the Premier League under Gary O'Neill. He then got loaned out to Leeds, and Leeds played an FA Cup tie at Chelsea, and he played the whole 90 minutes, set up the opening goal of the game, and Malo Gusto had arrived at Chelsea then, and he gave him a really rough time. So I remember him at Bournemouth. I don't know why it struck a chord. At Leeds, he really hit me in the face a little bit. He then went on loan. Leeds didn't take him, and he went on loan to Burnley. And this would be last season, where, of course, he scored 8 goals and played almost all the games first choice in their promotion season. And in the summer, Burnley bought him for a fee that wasn't announced. And he played on the left wing at the weekend when I saw him. And whatever struck me as a chord continues to do so. I think he looks a Premier League player.
Powerful, isn't he?
And he's the kind of Premier League player that I love and have loved all my life, in that they're not great, but they're really good. And if you put them up against someone average, they just completely destroy them. And I can think of, I mean, you do commentaries with someone like that. The Everton guy, Osman. Leon Osman.
Yeah.
I mean, Leon Osman was a fantastic Premier League player. Did he get one England cap, maybe?
Two, I think.
He was, but I mean, I can't over stress what a great Premier League player he was. But he wasn't a great player, which he'd probably be the first to admit in terms of.
I think it defines. You have to define what you mean by
but
great.
you're
talking about super talent.
No.
And, yeah.
So with Jaidon Anthony, he's not had a great Premier League career yet, but I think he can have one. And I think he's the top scorer for Burnley this season. And he's just, if he can, he's got 4 goals. If he can get that up to 8, 9, 10 goals, I think Burnley can survive, because they're going to be hard to beat for the teams around them. And I think he is the secret element. And I've just got to tell a little story. I became friends with Ian Britton, who was a Chelsea midfielder in the 1970s and early 80s. When he left us, he went to Scotland. He was Scottish. Came back, spent 3 years at Blackpool, and then went to Burnley to a game that we've talked about early in this podcast. He was at Burnley when they played the last game of the season, 4th Division, home to Leyton Orient. They beat them 2-1. Had they lost, they would have gone out of the league. It was 1986, 87, or 85, 86. It was the first year that you had relegation out of the 4th Division down to non-league football. And he got the goal, Ian Britton, that made it 2-0. And they won 2-1. He was 5'6", 5'5", Ian Britton, and he headed it. So it was a legendary goal. Before the game on Saturday at Turf Moor, they had footage up of Burnley in the old days, going back to when they won the Football League in 1961. And they'd done it really
1960.
well. 1960.
Tottenham won it in 1961.
Correct, 1960. And they'd done it really well, and they had old footage of these players, and then they'd taken them in their elder years, pictures of them, videos of them standing on the pitch at Turf Moor. So you saw the action, and you saw the old face kind of looking back on it, and it was just a Burnley thread. It was really well done. And I was just watching it and thinking, is that Ray Pointer? Is that Jimmy Adamson and all that? And Brits came up, Ian Britton. Now, I didn't know him when he was a player. I knew him as an ex-player in his later years. And he died in 2016 at age 61 from prostate cancer. And I went up and saw him like a week before he died. I've seen football footage of him, but I hadn't seen any footage of him in his elder years until that moment at Turf Moor before the game on the weekend. And I got all emotional. It really hit me. And then you saw the goal. There was footage of that goal, that heading goal. Why do I bring that up? Because Jaidon Anthony can become a legend at Burnley. You don't have to be a great player to be a legend. You have to be a great Burnley player to be a legend at Burnley. And I think Jaidon Anthony's got that in his makeup. I really, really do. So a few years before he died, Ian died in 2016, after a Burnley-Chelsea game, he took a few of us, 4 or 5 of us in all, on a pub crawl around the country around Turf Burnley, which is beautiful countryside, Lancashire countryside. And we finished up in this pub which had a basement, but there was a private do in the basement. So we were drinking in this pub, and somehow word got down to the basement that Ian Britton was upstairs. And it was a 50th birthday party, I think, and someone came bounding up, found him, got their photograph with the 50th birthday, invited the 5 of us down. The pub closed. I think we got out about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Jaidon Anthony can become Ian Britton in Burnley. Brilliant night that was. That's it.
We got through it.
Yeah. Thank you to St James's Place for being our sponsors this week.
I echo that.
And in weeks to come. Yeah. And we move on.
We do. All the shot one Woking 2s hardly had the mention it deserves, but on we go.
From Martin and me.
Cheers.
Okay, that's it. Thank you for watching, listening. Subscriptions, Patreon, Substack.com. Do you think if we got a financial expert on, we'd understand everything a bit better, or do you think football's just too difficult?
Football is too wonderful. I love it. Take care.